Hi readers, me here, and welcome to a special birthday edition. Today is my sister's birthday. I wish you a very, very happy birthday. I will message you, or by the time this airs, I will have already messaged you. So today I thought I'd talk about some books that me and my sister had in common when we were growing up together. Now we live far apart, so we don't always get to share books, but occasionally we do, and I share them with her via this means. So the first book that I want to talk about, you probably won't be able to see on your screen, but because I don't have a hard copy of this anymore, I don't know why, but it is Heartsick by Cain. And in this book, let me just start by saying, I don't remember everything that happened in this book. I didn't realize there were 6 books in the series. I never got that far. I did read the first 2. But I found this book so disturbing because of the interaction between 2 of the characters. So, let's recap. Damaged Portland detective Archie Sheridan spent 10 years tracking Gretchen Lowell, a beautiful serial killer. But in the end, she was the one who caught him. 2 years ago, Gretchen kidnapped Archie and tortured him for 10 days, but instead of killing him, she mysteriously decided to let him go. She turned herself in, and now Gretchen has been locked away for the rest of her life, while Archie is in a prison of another kind, addicted to pain pills, unable to return to his old life, powerless to get those 10 horrific days off his mind. Archie's a different person, his estranged wife says, and he knows she's right. He continues to visit Gretchen in prison once a week, saying that only he can get her to confess to the whereabouts of more of her victims. But even he knows the truth. He can't stay away. When another killer begins snatching teenage girls off the streets of Portland, Archie has to pull himself together enough to lead the new task force investigating the murders. I don't remember why they let him back in. A hungry young newspaper reporter, Susan Ward, begins profiling Archie and the investigation, which sparks a deadly game between Archie, Susan, the new killer, and even Gretchen. They need to catch a killer, and maybe somehow then Archie can free himself from Gretchen once and for all. Either way, Heartsick makes for one of the most extraordinary suspense debuts in recent memory. And now I feel like I want to read that book again, but I don't have a hard copy of it. I do have a copy on my Kindle. I just don't read well on my Kindle. See if they have it at the Barnes & Noble. They do not. Almost had another ad to my weekend books. Anywho, my sister and I both enjoyed that. I don't know if she's read the second one, Evil at Heart. But again, as I said, there are 4 other books outside of this I did not know about. So, in Evil at Heart, Gretchen Lowell is still on the loose. These days, she's more of a cause célèbre than a feared killer. Thanks to sensationalist news coverage that has made her a star, her face graces magazine covers weekly, and there have been sightings of her around the world. Most shocking of all, Portland Herald reporter Susan Ward has uncovered a bizarre kind of fan club which celebrates the number of days she's been free. Archie Sheridan hunted her for a decade, and after his last ploy to catch her went spectacularly wrong, remains hospitalized months later. When they last spoke, they entered a détente of sorts. Archie agreed not to kill himself if she agreed not to kill anybody else. But when a new body is found, accompanied by Gretchen's trademark heart, all bets are off, and Archie is forced back into action. Has the beauty killer returned to her gruesome ways, or has the cult surrounding her created a whole new evil? I do not remember anything about that book, but let me know if you've read it. So, next up is a book that, this one's not mine. Of course I have it. And I've not read much of this series, but I know that I've read some, and I know that my sister loves it. And the only one I have, well, the first one that I have in this series is C is for Corpse by Sue Grafton. My mom pretty much raised my sister and I on murder mysteries, so we share a lot of that in common. This series is about a detective, I think, named Kinsey Malone. Kinsey meets him in the local gym. Bobby Callahan is a scarred young man struggling back to life after a car forced his Porsche over the edge of a canyon, battering his body and muddling his memory. All he remembers is that for some reason, someone tried to kill him. Desperate for clues about his own past life and certain he's being stalked, he asks Kinsey to protect him. Kinsey can't resist the brave kid, and neither can the killer. 3 days later, Bobby is dead. Kinsey Malone never welched on a deal. She'd been hired to stop a killing. Now she'd find the killer. I don't know how long these go on for, but I think I might look that up. I have not read this. If I have read this one, I've not read it in a long time. Apologies, allergies. A conversation via Messenger with my sister made me remember this series because my sister is rereading them. Like me, she has her comfort reads, and she will reread them when she needs to. And the first one of this series that I have, and this was my book, I found my name in it, is Sara Paretsky's Bloodshot. And this series follows V.I. Warshawski. I don't know how to pronounce it. I used to could. I can't anymore. She's been called the most engaging woman in detective fiction since Dorothy Sayers' Harriet Vane. Don't know who that is. She's the indomitable V.I. Warshawski, who knows as much about the dark side of her native Chicago as she does about fine cuisine, opera, fashion, and, of course, men. Now, in her fifth and most probing V.I. novel, Sara Paretsky brings the private investigator back to her old neighborhood and to the past she cannot escape. Bloodshot begins innocently enough when V.I. attends the reunion of her championship basketball team, and Caroline, a childhood friend who organized the event, asks V.I. a professional favor. Find my father for me. Caroline's mother is dying, and Caroline, or is it Carolyn? Whatever, wants to meet the father she's never known. The search for him not only calls up memories of V.I.'s own childhood, but quickly mushrooms into something darker. After V.I. starts to probe, the body of another old friend turns up in the appropriately named Dead Stick Pond. Who would want Nancy Cleghorn dead? The list of suspects includes everyone from a powerful alderman to a chairman of a great chemical conglomerate. And what is the connection between Nancy's death and the search for Caroline's father? We'll find out. Well, I won't find out because I'm not going to reread this anytime soon. The print is mighty small in this, but have you read any of the V.I. books? I'd love to hear from if you have. Next up is a book that my sister turned me on to that I have not read yet, but of course I bought it because that's how I roll. And this is a medieval noir called Veil of Lies by Jeri Westerson. My sister, if I remember correctly, really enjoyed these books, and I hope that one day I get around to reading it and enjoy it too. Pulling out the old glasses. In London of 1384, Crispin Guest is a man adrift in a rigidly defined society. He is a disgraced knight, convicted of treason and stripped of his rank and his honor for plotting against Richard II. Barely escaping with his life, he lost his patron and his friends. With no trade to support him, Crispin has turned to the one thing he still has, his wits, to scrape a living on the mean streets of London. Styling himself as a private sheriff, Crispin agrees to work for a reclusive merchant who suspects his wife of infidelity and wants Crispin to look into the matter. He soon discovers that the wife is indeed up to something, but before he can inform his client, the merchant is found dead, murdered in a sealed room, locked from the inside. What was once a case of simple adultery is now a complex plot involving dark secrets, international intrigue, and a missing religious relic, one that lies at the heart of this impossible crime, with Crispin trapped in the middle of it all. This was published back in 2008, and I've had it at least a decade. Definitely we'll get to that one of these days. Now, finally, these aren't all the books that my sisters and I have shared. These are just a handful that I picked out. But the last one is the most fun. And if I believed in shame, this would be a secret shame. But I don't. I'm not going to be ashamed of what I read, and you shouldn't be either. Okay, maybe just slightly embarrassing. But because these are so corny. And yet, I loved them growing up. And I know that someone might have drunk ordered the whole series on Kindle at some point in their life. And that is the Sweet Valley High series. I loved these books growing up. I have almost every one of them. Not quite, though. One day I'll finish my collection, but they are pretty terrible. They're great for a rainy day read. If you need something light and impossible and just so dorky. Double Love is the first one, and I don't know. I have not reread one of these in a long time. I don't know if I would appreciate them the way I did when I was like a preteen. The Sweet Valley High series, as many of you probably know, star Elizabeth and Jessica Wakefield. And the first book is, like I said, Double Love. Will Jessica steal Todd from Elizabeth? Let's dive in. Elizabeth and Jessica Wakefield are identical twins at Sweet Valley High. They're both popular, smart, and gorgeous, because of course they fucking are. But that's where the similarity ends. Elizabeth is friendly, outgoing, and sincere. Nothing like her snobbish and conniving twin. Jessica gets what she wants. At school, with friends, and especially with boys. This time, Jessica has set her sights on Todd Wilkins, the handsome star of the basketball team, the one boy that Elizabeth really likes. Elizabeth doesn't want to lose him, but what Jessica wants, Jessica usually gets, even if it ends up hurting her sister. Meet the Wakefield twins, their guys, and the rest of the gang at Sweet Valley High. So corny. I'm going to try and see if I can find... Okay, this is the description. Because... Not sidebar. I actually DNF'd a book. I think I ended up turning it in at the used bookstore. But I DNF'd a book that was written fairly recently. Because all the characters were fucking gorgeous, not a flaw on them, and all the men got in bar fights because apparently that's what men do. I don't know. But the biggest criticism is, in the Sweet Valley High series, everybody's gorgeous. There are a few exceptions, but then they turn gorgeous somehow or another too. So, listen to this description of the Wakefield twins. Both girls had the same shoulder-length, sun-streaked blonde hair, the same sparkling blue-green eyes, the same perfect skin at, 15, 16? Come on. Even the tiny dimple in Elizabeth's left cheek was duplicated in her younger sister's, younger by 4 minutes. Both girls were 5'6" on the button and generously blessed with spectacular all-American good looks. What are all-American good looks? Both wore exactly the same size clothes, but they refused to dress alike, except for the exquisite, identical lavaliers they wore on gold chains around their necks. The lavaliers had been presents from their parents on their 16th birthday. The only way you could tell them apart was the tiny beauty mark on Elizabeth's right shoulder. Their friends might notice that Elizabeth wore a watch and Jessica did not. Time was never a problem for Jessica. She always felt that things really didn't start until she got there. Anywho, so many stereotypes, so very privileged. But I had fun with them, and I loved them, and life can't all be murder and mayhem. Anywho, that is it for me. Happy birthday again to my very special sister. I love you. Happy reading.